What if everything you've been taught about success, happiness, and peace is actually keeping you from all three? Imagine a life where external chaos simply cannot reach you, where the opinions of others, the swings of fortune, and the weight of expectations no longer dictate your inner state. It sounds almost mythical, but what if the blueprint for this kind of unshakable existence has been available for over 2,000 years, waiting quietly for you to discover it? Welcome to what might be the most important exploration you'll ever undertake. We live in an age of constant distraction, of notifications that demand our attention, of social pressures that never relent, and of ambitions that leave us breathless and empty. Our modern world is a symphony of noise, and somewhere in that noise we've lost the ability to hear ourselves think. But there exists a path through the noise, a way of being that offers something the world cannot give and cannot take away. It's not about escaping life's difficulties, but about transforming your relationship with them entirely. Here's an uncomfortable truth that most people spend their lives avoiding. Life does not get easier. The challenges don't stop coming. But here's the part worth paying attention to. You can become stronger. Not just a little stronger, but fundamentally different in how you experience everything life throws at you. This philosophy doesn't teach you to escape pain or bypass difficulty. Instead, it teaches you how to stand in the middle of chaos with a clear mind and steady hands. In a world addicted to reaction, to noise, to ego-driven performance, it becomes an anchor that holds firm no matter how violently the waters churn. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by life, if you've ever found yourself reacting to things you wish you hadn't, if you've ever been tired of chasing things that leave you feeling emptier than before, know that you're not alone. And more importantly, know that you're exactly where you need to be to begin something transformative. What if the most important battle you'll ever fight isn't with the world, but with yourself? It's so easy to point outward, to blame society, politics, other people, your upbringing. But the chaos we see mirrored in the world around us reflects something deeper, something brewing in the hidden spaces within each of us. We carry it in our thoughts, in our moods, in our restless scrolling, in our inability to sleep, because our minds won't quiet down. And yet most of us have never truly stopped long enough to look inward. Consider the struggles that plague so many of us: procrastination, jealousy, anger, insecurity. These aren't random afflictions. They rise from patterns that have been shaped within us over years. And if we don't bring these patterns into the light, they will quietly control us. They will guide our choices, limit our risks, and keep us living the same year over and over. The mind isn't a unified force, it's a battlefield. Plato once described the soul as a chariot pulled by two horses. One is noble, reaching toward reason and virtue. The other is wild, charging toward impulse and chaos. And the charioteer, that's you, trying to guide both. Most of the time, we're not even holding the reins. The noble horse whispers of discipline, integrity, and long-term growth. The wild horse demands comfort, distraction, and immediate relief. Both are part of you. The war isn't about destroying one side. It's about learning how to guide them both. To understand this war is to realize that self-awareness isn't a luxury. It's a responsibility. Because when you don't know your own mind, you are at its mercy. It will convince you of things that aren't true. It will replay old pain as if it's happening right now. It will project your wounds onto others and call it justice. And worst of all, it will keep you busy doing things that feel urgent but leave you empty. Socrates once said that the unexamined life isn't worth living. He meant that life without reflection becomes mere repetition. And repetition without understanding leads to regret. You wake up years later wondering how you got here, why you're perpetually tired, why nothing satisfies you for long. That's the danger of ignoring the inner war. It doesn't just affect your mood, it shapes your entire direction. Fear is part of being human, but so is courage. And courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. It's the moment you finally sit with your thoughts instead of running. The decision to ask yourself why you really feel this way instead of numbing it with a screen. It's the daily effort to choose presence over distraction, honesty over comfort, growth over ego. We live in a time where self-help is everywhere, and yet true self-understanding is rare. There's a difference between consuming wisdom and living it. What changes you isn't information, it's attention. Focused, patient attention to your own inner life. And in that attention, you begin to see patterns. You notice how your tone changes when you feel threatened, how you dismiss compliments, how you replay that one mistake from 5 years ago like it happened yesterday. When you begin to understand yourself, the war softens, the judgment quiets, and you stop needing to fight so much. The more you accept yourself, the more you grow, because growth doesn't come from shame. It comes from awareness, from seeing clearly, not condemning blindly. And that clarity gives you choice. You can respond instead of react. You can pause instead of spiral. You can choose your values over your impulses. That's freedom, not the absence of struggle, but the presence of awareness within it. It's easy to forget that we are layered beings. We carry different voices inside, some old, some new, some loud, some barely audible. And they don't always agree. Harmony doesn't mean uniformity. It means learning how to listen, how to guide the inner choir instead of silencing it. Because each part of you has something to say. Even the angry part, even the sad part, especially the wounded part. They're not your enemies, they're your signals. Signals that you've been through something, that you've cared deeply, that you've longed for more. And when you finally give them a seat at the table, you stop being a stranger to yourself. You become a home. Not a perfect one, but a true one. And from that place, something shifts. You stop needing to fix the world to feel okay. Because you've learned how to make peace within. How much of your anxiety comes from trying to control things that were never yours to control in the first place? That quiet tension in your chest. That endless spinning of thoughts at night. That sense that something is always about to go wrong. How much of it is caused by your mind grasping at things it was never meant to hold? The truth is, life doesn't wait for you to be ready. It moves unpredictably, messily, and often without your permission. And somewhere along the way, we started believing that if we could just be smarter, faster, better prepared, we'd finally get ahead of it. We'd finally outmaneuver the chaos. But that chase is exhausting. It wears you down slowly, convincing you that you're failing, not because you are, but because you've taken on a task no one can complete. There's a kind of peace that comes with accepting limits, not the passive kind that gives up, but the strong, grounded kind that knows the difference between power and pressure. Responsibility, real responsibility, doesn't mean controlling outcomes. It means owning your response, your attitude, your effort, your integrity. Everything else is weather. Carl Jung once said that you are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become. That choice, that tiny space between stimulus and response, is where your true power lives. Not in forcing life to bend to your will, but in shaping how you move through it. Think of how much weight you carry that doesn't belong to you. Other people's moods, their decisions, their words. You replay conversations. Try to read between the lines. Imagine what you could have said differently. But those moments are gone. You can't re-enter them. You can't revise them. And still your mind clings to them like they might offer something new. They won't. What they offer is a lesson, not a leash. Learn it and let it go. The philosopher Epictetus believed that some things are up to us and some things are not. This simple idea holds immense power. It reminds us that wisdom doesn't always mean knowing what to do. Sometimes it means knowing when to stop, when to breathe, when to surrender. Not in weakness, but in wisdom. Letting go doesn't mean detachment from life. It means deeper engagement with what actually matters. When you stop trying to control everything, you can finally focus on what you can influence. Your tone in that conversation, the way you show up for someone you love, the discipline you bring to your goals. These are real. They are yours and they matter. The more you live from that place, the more you start to notice the noise fade. You feel less pulled by urgency and more rooted in clarity. You stop chasing perfection and start practicing presence. You begin to see how much of your anxiety was a byproduct of misdirected energy. It wasn't that life was too much. It was that you were holding too tightly to things you were never meant to control. And with that space comes peace. Not because life gets easier, but because you stop fighting battles that aren't yours. You stop answering questions that don't need answers. You start living more fully in your own lane. And with each choice, you build a quiet confidence. Not the kind that needs to prove itself, but the kind that simply knows. What you release is not loss. It's space for what belongs. The work is not to control everything. It's to see clearly, to choose wisely, and to become the anchor in the storm. Storms will come, but you'll face them differently, not by holding tighter, but by standing taller. Not by trying to predict every wave, but by trusting your ability to navigate. Not with fear, but with presence. That's when peace becomes possible. Not as an escape, but as a foundation. You stop needing everything to go your way. You stop fearing discomfort. You realize you can handle more than you thought, not because you control everything, but because you're finally focusing on what you can control. Your character, your choices, your clarity. And from that place, your life begins to shift. Imagine your mind as a fortress, a place that should protect you, shelter you, give you clarity when the world outside becomes too loud. But what happens when that fortress has no walls? When thoughts rush in without filter, emotions storm the gates, and fear settles in the throne room. It starts with attention, not the scattered, overstimulated kind, but deep, deliberate attention. Because everything that enters your mind starts with what you give your attention to. Every headline, every conversation, every whispered fear or hope. You let them in, most of the time, not consciously. And over time, they shape the architecture of your inner world. The strongest minds aren't the ones that know everything. They're the ones that know what to ignore, what to let go of, what to guard fiercely. That's the strength that lasts. That's the kind of fortress that helps you grow, not just survive. So when the world gets loud, when the inner noise builds, when it all feels too much, pause, breathe. Remember that not everything deserves entry. Not every thought belongs in your sanctuary. You get to choose every moment, every day, brick by brick. How do you let go without disconnecting? Is it possible to care deeply without being emotionally enslaved? When you give your all to something, and it slips out of your control, it's hard not to wonder how to keep your heart open without letting it break you. Caring is beautiful. The problem begins when caring becomes clinging, when you start to believe that your worth depends on fixing, saving, proving, pleasing. But what if letting go isn't abandonment? What if it's clarity? You can't carry someone else's growth. You can't force someone to heal, to change, to meet you halfway. You can only offer and then step back. Letting go doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you start loving in a healthier way, with open hands instead of clenched fists, with presence instead of pressure. It means acknowledging that you can care without controlling, that you can stay connected without being tangled. Boundaries, contrary to popular belief, aren't walls. They're doors with locks. They say, I'm here, I care, but I won't abandon myself to prove it. They protect your energy, your clarity, your identity. And when your boundaries are intact, your love becomes cleaner, calmer. The world will always have its battles, but the most important one, the one that shapes how you show up in every relationship, every choice, every moment, is the one within. Win that, and everything else begins to align. Not instantly, not perfectly, but meaningfully. So the next time you feel restless, angry, numb, or lost, pause, not to escape, but to look inward. Not to solve yourself, but to understand yourself. Because the real battle was never out there, it was always here. Quiet, constant, and waiting for your attention.